been sold the idea that financial independence is all about some number on your account statement, or even worse, that you don't qualify because of where you started out. That's just not true. It's not about some well-kept secret of the wealthy. It's about finding the right information and knowing how to apply it. On the Get Ready for the Future show, we're answering your questions so you can start making real financial change today. The journey to true financial independence begins right here, and it starts with you.
From the West Little Rock office of GenWealth Financial Advisors, where we help people every day discover, protect, and share true financial independence, this is another edition of the Get Ready for the Future show. We are glad to have you along, as we are each and every week, no matter where you get our show, whether you're listening on radio or podcast or getting us on live stream or online through your YouTube channel. We're all over the place. There is an opportunity for you to check out the show. And if you're a first-time viewer or listener, welcome aboard. My name is Scott Inman. I'm here most weeks. Tim Key, who works with me here in the West Little Rock office, here a lot of weeks as well, where we answer your questions about finance, whether it's retirement related, investment related, anything that's on your mind. We encourage you to get a question in to us. And you can do that by sending a text or leaving a voicemail at 501-381-5228. Again, it's 501-381-5228. We've got some good questions this week, Tim. We're going to be dealing with a mortgage question, when and how to pay it off as you get ready for retirement, feeling like you're behind on retirement savings, when to take Social Security, and helping an elderly parent make some decisions. So we're all over the map today on some great questions, but it does highlight for me, before we dive in, every week it does, but those questions are so detailed and so varied between them. There's so many complex issues that people have to deal with and make decisions about that can impact where they are and how they get to financial independence.
Yeah, I think the main thing is you have to know that you don't have to do it yourself.
Right.
And there is so much information out there. People Google things all the time and get answers that may or may not be correct and may not be right for your situation.
Yep.
So really being able to sit down with someone who can help you through that process. Financial advisor is a good one for some of these things, but there's also just reaching out and knowing that you're not alone in doing a lot of these things.
Yeah, and that's a great point, too, because when you do Google things, you're going to get rules of thumb, which we are very fond of calling rules of dumb, blanket coverage statements. You might actually get advertising from a financial firm that tells you always do this and never do this, always invest in this and never invest in this. And that is really not the right approach you should take for your particular unique circumstances. You should never take advice that is meant for the masses and apply it to your specific situation. It might eventually apply to your specific situation, but you need to work through the planning process with a trusted advisor before you come to that conclusion, because everybody's situation is different, and you're going to hear that in these questions today. So hopefully you'll get something out of the questions if you are similar to the people that are asking the question, or if you know somebody that needs some education in these areas. We hope that's what you get out of today's show. So let's dive in. Johnny from Cabot is first. I'm 61 and have around $975,000 in savings. My job's getting more stressful and I'd like to walk away next year, but we still have $90,000 left on the mortgage. How do I know if I can retire early without risking our lifestyle? So if you've got close to $1 million saved but still have a mortgage, is an early retirement realistic or risky? So we're already at 61, got a good amount saved. I think the first thing that jumps out to me, well, I'm going to say a couple of things, Tim. I think the first thing is I don't think that Johnny needs to be laser beam focused on just the $90,000 left on the mortgage. Now, we talk about these questions all the time, and we don't know the intent behind the words that the folks use on these questions always, but that seems to be what he's saying. Hey, I want to retire. I've got this saved, but I got that mortgage hanging over my head. And I think it is a great concept to think about entering retirement with no mortgage. And certainly, in reality, we want all of our clients to do that. But you don't want to make a bad decision on wiping out the mortgage just to enter retirement mortgage free.
Yeah, we really have to give it a little more consideration than just saying, I don't want a house payment or mortgage payment in retirement. In fact, I've got some clients I'm working with right now that they retired a few years ago, just made a move. sold their house, but they're not going to have enough to buy the next house. And so they said earlier this week to me that they wanted to go ahead and take out from their IRA enough to pay off and pay cash for the house that they're actually building, which would be about another $120,000 from their retirement accounts. So it's not just $120,000 though, because you're actually going to be moving yourself possibly into a higher tax bracket, which you're going to have to pay taxes on that IRA money. So we're assuming that this $975,000 of it from Johnny, or a lot of it, is probably in retirement accounts. That's normally what we get with our clients here. They don't have as much in non-retirement accounts as they do retirement accounts. So when you're considering taking out a distribution from your retirement accounts, you also have to consider the tax situation that you're putting yourself in. Sometimes it makes sense to just go ahead and make that monthly payment, and maybe we accelerate the payoff of the mortgage over time, but we don't want to necessarily unplug $120,000 plus and pay taxes and not have that invested going forward. So we can really build a retirement income plan for you that maybe concludes a mortgage payment for another 4 or 5 years until you get that $90,000 knocked out, and then that payment goes away, and then we can really continue that income plan, maybe with a lesser amount.
And that leads me to the second piece of the question that stands out. How do I know if I can retire early without risking our lifestyle? We got to put some numbers, Johnny, behind what lifestyle means, because we don't know. Do you have a modest lifestyle or an extravagant lifestyle? Certainly, as you get close to 62 years old with $975,000 in savings, there's a really good chance that if you have a modest to moderate lifestyle, you're going to be just fine. But we need to walk through, as Tim has already alluded to, the process of building a retirement income plan. We need to define, from a monthly income perspective, what does lifestyle mean here? Now, if you're spending every dime you make and you're a high income earner, that might be a red flag that we're going to have to change your lifestyle if we're going to continue to pay a mortgage for at least the early years of retirement. But if you're already saving a considerable amount of that income and not using it, which I would probably suggest that he is doing because he's been able to accumulate almost $1 million in savings, then when you stop saving and you're only spending, you won't have to live on all of your current employment income.
And your lifestyle really doesn't change much. Research has shown that if you're a spender, you're going to probably continue to spend. And if you're a saver, you're going to continue to try to save in retirement. So don't think that if you're, spending $200,000 a year and now you're going to retire and live on $100,000, that's probably not going to be likely, even if you didn't have a mortgage payment. So you really have to consider, where you are, what you're spending. Again, that goes back to having a retirement income plan. That's what we do for our clients all day, every day. And so being able to sit down at 61 and determining, it's stressful, and we all would rather get away from stressful jobs because it can really take its toll on us.
Yep.
There are some other options maybe that we can do. Maybe we can step back into a lesser stressed position and maybe have less income, but continue to work part-time to be able to push that retirement date maybe a little further, so you can continue to accumulate some assets so that we can get you into a better position of being able to retire without the stress of retirement and running out of money during your retirement being one of those things that we have to consider.
Yeah, that's a big piece of this too, because Johnny's asking about retirement, but it's not really retirement we're talking about. We're talking about true financial independence, meaning you can support your lifestyle without working, or you can support your lifestyle with working part-time potentially to take stress off the assets, as Tim has already alluded to. Johnny doesn't tell us if he's married, but if you are, what about your spouse? Is your spouse going to keep working? We talk about that, and we can address other people listening to this question in this. If you're a couple, and especially if there's an age difference, my wife is about 7 years younger than me, so our retirement income plan, our plan for true financial independence, obviously has me reaching financial independence before she does, because she's going to continue to have some employment income that will allow us to not spend down our assets. It's all about kind of having this smooth process of stepping into either part-time work or full stop retirement and knowing what your monthly income is going to be. And so many people don't know that. And Johnny is kind of asking about the mortgage, and I think we took it and ran with it a little bit here, but you do need to think about more than just being laser beam focused on one thing. It is a holistic plan that needs to be put in place for Johnny and everyone who is walking into retirement. We want to remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel for exclusive content you can't find anywhere else to help you discover, protect, and share true financial independence. We are there on YouTube. Just search for Gen Wealth Financial Advisors. You can also see episodes of the Get Ready for the Future show there. Time for our next question. It's from Jessica via text message. My husband and I are both 55. We've saved about $400,000 so far and plan to retire at 67, but it doesn't feel like enough. How can we tell if we're way behind or just need to ramp things up a bit? Well, both could be true here, Jessica. You know, you've saved $400,000 at 55, but is it enough? If you've ever asked, am I behind? This one is for you. So the reason I say both could be true, I don't know that you're way behind. You could be behind, but you also need to probably be ramping things up. I can say that across the board. But most people are in the same boat as you, Jessica. A study by the Pew Charitable Trust found that nearly 51% of people worry they'll run out of money when they're no longer earning a paycheck. 70% of retirees wish they had started saving earlier. Nearly a third of retirees are considering going back to work, so you want to be prepared as early as you can be to know where you stand and to be able to do something about it. Now, the things that stand out to me here, Tim, at 55 and a planned retirement age of 67, they've got a lot of time. 12 years may not sound like much, and it's certainly less than you had when you were younger, and if you feel like you're behind, you feel like there's not time, but you have more money now than you had when you were younger. And the power of compound interest takes effect here. There's still some growth that can take place on that $400,000 in 12 years. And if we can get the contributions ramped up, they can make a huge difference by the time they retire.
Yeah, they've got less time than a 25-year-old, and we'd all go look back and say we wish we would have started earlier, but you have to start where you are. And you've got a good amount saved already in $400,000. Yeah, you do have 12 years before you're age 67. I can relate with the age, and I know that at this age, oftentimes the kids are out of the house. Maybe they're on their own. Maybe you're still helping them a bit. But because of that, usually you do have more cash flow in your monthly budget, and that's where you can really ramp up and start saving more. In your work retirement plans at age 50, they already have the catch-up contribution, so you could go ahead and work that into your plan. And so if you are able to, you can really put away a lot of money into your work retirement accounts, and there's also IRAs that are available outside of that. So the good thing is you do have time. The thing is, you probably need to meet with an advisor and find out how much do you need to be saving to reach your goals at age 67. So there's a lot of benefits of just sitting down with someone now, even if you may not meet with them on an annual basis, but sit down with them now and kind of put those numbers together to see how much do we really need to be putting into our retirement accounts to get to where we want to be at age 67.
Yeah, if you're in your 50s, you are now eligible for those catch-up contributions that Tim alluded to in a qualified plan, so like a 401k, that you would be able to contribute an additional $7,500 for a total of $31,000 in 2025. Now, that's just your contributions. That's not counting your employer. And then new this year, and since these folks are at 55, between ages 60 and 63, the catch-up contribution is actually $11,250 instead of the $7,500. So you could actually, between ages 60 and 63, contribute each a total of $34,750 into your employer plans. And we're talking about qualified plans like 401ks. This is not an IRA. It's 401ks through your employer. So the opportunity is there to really ramp up contributions for anyone that is looking to retire and still has that time left, no matter how far behind they are. But I think next, Tim, those catch-up contributions are useless if they don't have the margin in their life to add to their contributions. So debt is a big piece here too.
Yeah, debt's huge, and we always want retirees, if possible, to be going into retirement without any debt. But again, how do you get out of debt? And that's really putting some focus on that. So you quit going into debt for one, you quit building more, but then you remain focused with your monthly budget, and you start really putting that money toward that debt and making those payments and increasing those payments if necessary. And once you get the margin in your monthly budget, and that's really taking and paying off the debt, eliminating all those payments, that's when you have the ability to really do the maximum to the 401k plus the catch up, plus maybe contribute to your IRAs and things like that. And then that's when you're really making the ground. But debt really slows us all down. And so a lot of us have 2 car payments, maybe a mortgage, and then the credit card comes into play because we had an emergency and we didn't have an emergency fund to cover it. And so now we're always playing catch up. And so if you feel like you're always playing catch up, that's where you also need to sit down with someone and maybe get an accountability partner, someone that can just kind of walk you through and be there, that can reach out to you on a regular basis and see how you're doing and see if you're making the right steps toward that. But really getting out of debt and building that margin into your monthly budget, like Scott said, is one of the most critical things we can do.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is an encouragement too on this question too. If you're already thinking you're going to work till 67, that's a good indicator to me that you're going to be able to make it too. Because if you were coming in here and saying we're 55, we want to retire at 60, that's a different story, right? But because you're going to be able to not only contribute longer and see the growth of your investments, as we've already talked about, you're also going to be able to allow your Social Security benefit to get larger. At 67, you're going to have a higher Social Security benefit than you would at 62, obviously. You might even be able to defer it for the first 3 years of retirement and get it to its largest amount by delaying it to age 70. We've seen that with people that if you are going to work longer, you don't have to have as many assets because you're going to have bigger payments from Social Security. Yeah,
those guaranteed income payments or mailbox money that we like to call it from Social Security, and there's no mention of a pension in here, but some folks have it. You're getting that guaranteed check, multiple checks every month. You don't have to have as much saved. And so, again, bringing this all into one plan as far as what your required income is going to be and what money are you going to be able to have from Social Security based on the ages that you take it and so forth. That's what we do for our clients in building a unique plan for each one of them, and that's what we can do for you.
I would also say you need to really build that plan to address the investment strategy for the $400,000. We have spent a lot of time talking about how you need growth, and you do because you're trying to catch up, but you also want to add some protection as you get closer to distributing those assets to yourself as income. Now, you're probably, if your planned retirement timeline is 12 years away, you're probably not quite into the retirement red zone yet, but you're getting close. We define it as once you're inside of a decade. Inside of 10 years from your planned retirement, you need an investment strategy that begins to address the 3 big risks in retirement. We've talked about on this show before, the sequence of return risk. Now, that is in play on day one of retirement, but the assets need to be positioned in a way that you're not going to take a big hit in the market. Some of your assets need to be positioned in a way that you're not going to be taking a big hit in the market right before you need to start receiving income. Sequence of return basically just means it's a reverse of dollar cost averaging. If you're selling shares of an investment as it goes down in value, it can rapidly increase the depletion of your assets. A few months difference can make a few months difference in the market can make a huge difference in your retirement. So you have to have those assets positioned in a more conservative strategy for the money you're taking now. Of course, they're 12 years away from that, so you probably don't need that piece of it, but you need to be thinking about that with your advisor. And then the second one is inflation risk. We know in retirement that prices are going to go up, and Social Security is not likely to keep up with that. So your assets have to. So you have to be invested in a growth strategy even in retirement to be able to offset the eroding effects of inflation. And then the last one, Tim, is longevity, and that's the big one too. You don't think of it as a risk. We think of it as a blessing, and it is, but living a long life is also a risk to your assets.
Just puts more stress on the assets that you do have. So that's why it's important sometimes if you're going to work to 70 to maybe delay Social Security to 70 and get the largest benefit that you can and have that largest benefit continue on through the rest of your life. And you being married, the largest Social Security check will continue on after whoever it is passes away first. So it may go to the spouse and pass on to them, but you are going to lose the smaller check. So being able to have a plan as far as making sure that if you lived to 90 or 95 and medicine these days is getting more and more advanced, and we may see longer lifespans. So we don't know what it's going to look like, and you may have some very long years ahead of you, and you don't want to make those any longer by running out of money.
Listen, if you're 10 years or less away from your planned retirement date and you have not worked with an advisor to develop an investment strategy that tackles the 3 big risks, we want to invite you to reach out to a Gen Wealth financial advisor and walk through the Gen Wealth Ready to Retire process. Walking through that first appointment is absolutely free. No cost to you to meet with an advisor. If you'd like to do that, reach out to us. You can reach out to us toll-free, 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. This is our question of the week. Jessica, thanks for reaching out with it. We're going to send you a free Get Ready for the Future Show tumbler. There it is right there for our video audience. We just need you to email us, show@getreadyforthefuture.com to claim it. Moving on to Amber from Benton. I just turned 59 and started getting Social Security statements. If I live into my 90s like my parents did, should I delay benefits to 70 or take them sooner and invest the difference? Your parents lived into the 90s, in their 90s, and now the question is, take Social Security early or wait it out for a bigger check. Longevity can change the math and the mindset. So the first piece here, just flat out off the top tell you, the break-even point, if you're comparing taking Social Security at the earliest you can at age 62 versus taking it the latest you can take it, or the latest you would ever want to take it at age 70. You can wait past then, but it's not going to get any bigger. So the biggest check at 70, smallest check at 62. The break-even point is usually around 81 or 82 years old. Now that basically just means that if you would have made more money from Social Security by waiting to take the benefit at age 70 if you live past age 82. So that tells me that if you think you're going to live in your 90s, maybe you want to think about delaying. But you really don't want to base your Social Security claiming strategy on that alone. Now, there's a big difference. At 62, which, as we've already mentioned, is the earliest you can take it, it's at a reduced benefit. It grows about 6% a year to full retirement age, which is for almost all of us now who haven't already started their Social Security, it's going to be 67. If you're born 1960 or later, full retirement age is 67. So from 62 to 67, it's going to grow about 6% a year. If you defer past age 67 to age 70, it's going to grow at about 8% per year. So you're giving up pretty decent raises there if you take it earlier than age 70. But again, longevity, Tim, is not the only consideration.
No, she even mentioned, should I take it and invest it and invest the difference?
Yep.
But we also don't know how long is she going to work, and that's another factor that comes into play when looking at Social Security. As you mentioned, most of us, our full retirement age is 67. If you start taking Social Security and you still have earned income, and this year if it's more than I think $23,400, then you have to pay back $1 of your Social Security benefit for every $2 over that $23,400 you make. So for our clients that continue to work and have substantial income, whether that's $50,000 or $100,000, it doesn't make sense for you to claim your Social Security benefit at 62. So the earliest that we would recommend would be when you actually retire and not have Social Security. But if you are working to 67, and you may retire at that age, maybe it does make sense for you to go ahead and let your Social Security benefit that next 3 years to age 70 grow at that 8% annual rate and live on your the investments you've been able to save up so that you lock in that larger check. That larger check is the one that gets the annual cost of living adjustment that Social Security does. As Scott mentioned, it's probably not going to keep up with inflation over time, but obviously a 2 or 3% increase is more on a $4,000 check than it is on a $3,000 check. So there is a lot to take into consideration. We don't know exactly how much in other assets that we have to work with here and that Amber has been able to save herself. So there's a lot of things to consider as far as that goes that we really need to be able to sit down, walk through a plan. Again, it all comes back to that retirement income plan and be able to determine when is the best time for Amber to start Social Security.
Amber doesn't say anything about a spouse, but have you ever been married? Do you have an ex-spouse? Do you have a deceased spouse? There's a lot of other parts to this because you may be eligible to take their Social Security benefit as well. So all of those Social Security decisions need to be made in a more holistic view rather than only thinking about, hey, I'm probably going to live a long life. Should I wait to take Social Security? Or should I take it now and invest it? If you don't need it, Investing it is one option, but certainly if you're going to continue to work, it makes more sense to wait to take it until you actually until you actually retire. As Tim mentioned, the holistic piece of this: get your Social Security statement, but don't just look at that. Get your 401k statement, all of your investment account statements. Get your financial documents together that pertain to retirement, and go see an advisor. And be sure to choose one that is a fiduciary. We here at Gen Wealth are that, and that will build a retirement income plan unique to you, not one that's just going to pitch you some investments, that is going to actually build a written financial plan for you that can show you what retirement will look like. And that, once you have all the pieces in place, you see the full puzzle that's put together, and then you can make the Social Security decision that is right for you. Our last question on the Get Ready for the Future show this week from Robert in Fayetteville. I'm 60 and my mom is 87 and starting to decline. We're not sure if we should sell our home now, keep it, or move her into assisted living. How do we protect her assets while making sure she gets the care she needs? Well, she's 87, declining, and still in her house. Do you sell? Keep it? What about long-term care? The emotional and financial decisions can collide here, and there are a lot of people who are dealing with this. They call it the sandwich generation, people who are just finishing raising their kids, and Robert may be well past that at age 60, but people are obviously having kids later in life. We don't know if he's in that sandwich generation, but among the people who are, I looked up a Pew Research article, the financial stress of the sandwich generation. They asked folks who qualified in that, and basically, again, to define the sandwich generation, we're talking about people who are maybe still taking care of kids or supporting them, whether they're adult or not, by maybe through college or whatever reason they are still supporting them, and then they're having to make financial decisions and maybe even provide financial support for their aging parents. So the question was, to the sandwich generation, how would you describe your household's financial situation? And only 28% who are supporting a parent 65 and over said that they live comfortably. 30% said they just meet basic expenses, and 30% said they meet basic expenses with a little bit left over. So this is, I think, the first piece for me as I think about Robert's question is certainly we want to help our aging parent. And his question really isn't asking about the financial support of that, but certainly being careful to make sure your own retirement plan is intact and you're on track for that before you offer financial assistance to your 87-year-old mom. Certainly want to help, but not to the detriment of your own financial independence. And it doesn't sound like that is really necessarily a problem for Robert here, because she does have some assets, Tim. So let's dive in. The asset he's talking about is her home.
Yeah, her home's probably her biggest asset. In a lot of cases it is. Obviously that's what he's concerned about, and protecting that. I mean, there are some situations where, using that home to sell it and then use the proceeds from that to pay her, care needs is probably the most common way. But there's situations and always questions asked, how can I protect that so that the nursing home doesn't get that? Well, the nursing home is providing a service to her, and like any service that's provided, there's a cost. And so, I think it's our duty to really pay for that benefit. And so, folks that try to hide assets and protect assets, and there is a way. It's called an irrevocable trust, and most people think about them and like them until they actually have one, because it really does add some restrictions on it. Because once you move your assets into an irrevocable trust, they're no longer your assets, and so you have no real access to them, and no one else has access to them as well for the cost that the expenses that you build up on that potentially through the nursing home. So that actually gets you into a situation where you get into Medicaid, and you have to have $2,000 or less to your name to qualify for Medicaid, and then the Medicaid would actually take over and pay the benefits. Now, once you pass away, if there is that potential, if the money was not in the irrevocable trust, that they would be able to go back and have that house sold and be able to take those proceeds and pay the expenses that you racked up with Medicaid. But that's really one of the things that we probably wouldn't want to do. it's just a big concern that when we start protecting assets, and especially with an irrevocable trust, we also have what's called the 5-year look-back rule. And with your mom being 87, we're looking at 92 before those assets are free and clear of being able to actually have them go back after them. So at this point, we're probably looking at keeping the house more than likely. There's a potential maybe to rent that and generate income while she's in a nursing home to be able to pay for those expenses and still keep the house. So there's some alternatives there that we could definitely look at.
Yeah, I think the decision on moving her to assisted living, first of all, I would say needs to be made in conjunction with healthcare providers and not just being made as a financial decision. But once it is in your wheelhouse to determine that, and the healthcare provider has weighed in, I think the biggest piece to this in answering this question for me is to focus rather on protecting, or the way to focus on protecting the assets is on focusing on generating an income stream that won't fully deplete the assets. And Tim's already alluded to one option here. You could move her from the home into assisted living and rent out the home and provide some income for her to be able to pay for assisted living. The other thing is let's take a look at other assets she may have. If there are some investments here, if there are retirement accounts, if there are non-retirement accounts, if there's cash, creating an investment strategy that will generate some income above whatever she's living on now that will handle, or at least potentially handle, some of the added expenses. So I think that's the mindset shift for people who are thinking about, well, I don't want the nursing home to get my assets, so I don't want the nursing home to get my money. The nursing home is not going to come after your assets. They're going to send you a bill, and you are responsible to pay that bill. So if you can generate income to pay it, or at least enough income from your assets so that it slows the depletion down. The average stay in a nursing home is 3 years. So we're not talking about eternity here. My 103-year-old grandmother just passed away last week. She was above average. She was there for almost 6 years. Okay, but most people are not going to live that long in the nursing home. So it is a temporary thing that has to be paid for. And I think we've got to get this focus away from hiding the assets as a means of protection and protect through generating income.
Yeah, it is temporary, even though when we're in the middle of it, it doesn't feel so temporary sometimes. Yep. One of the things we also need to consider are the taxes for selling a house, and sitting down with someone, a CPA or an advisor, and looking at the cost basis and whatnot. Maybe it's best to actually have that inherited so you get a step up in cost basis. But one of the other most critical things is at 87 is to really help your mom review, does she have her estate planning in place? The healthcare directives, the power of attorney, so you can actually do everything you need to. Any account that she has, are the beneficiaries in place? Do they need to be updated? So those are things that we definitely need to consider at this point, more so than just protecting the assets.
Yeah, the other thing, too, as we hear our final bell, we'll get into final thoughts in just a moment, but I do want to say this for Robert. This is also, Robert, when many people start to recognize their own need for a plan for long-term care. At 87, it's probably too late for your mom to leverage insurance in any way for long-term care coverage, but at 60, it's not for you. So anybody listening today who has those aging parents, and those are usually the clients, Tim, that have their ears tuned the most to listening to long-term care coverage or a long-term care plan, are the ones that have gone through it with their parents. They've seen what it costs to pay for care. Take a look at that as a piece of your overall plan to long-term care. Time for our final thoughts.
Yeah, if you're listening today, you probably didn't wake up and say, I need to go see a financial advisor today. I'll just listen to their show. But, the earlier you can see an advisor, the earlier you can seek some help in just getting a plan put together, the more time you have to work that plan. You don't want to just wait until retirement or wait until an event happens. Go ahead and get the plan in place so you can work it. Oftentimes it takes a large load off your shoulders.
I want to remind people, too, on how to reach out to a GenWealth financial advisor if you'd like to begin working through the GenWealth Ready to Retire process, or you just have a few questions like our viewers and listeners did today that you'd like to just talk to an advisor. A complimentary appointment is available to you at any time. Just pick up the phone and call 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. You can also shoot us an email. Just send it to show@getreadyforthefuture.com and say, I want to connect with a Gen Wealth financial advisor, I've got a few questions I want to ask, or I want to come in for my complimentary appointment. We'll talk through your goals, ask you to bring a few documents for our review, and we'll determine in that meeting if it makes sense to move forward and develop a relationship with one of our advisors. We hope you'll do that today. And that is all the time we have for this week's show. Reminder to get the questions in for next week's show. All you have to do is text or send a voicemail to 501-381-5228. It's 501-381-5228. And maybe we'll use your question on the air next week. See you then.
The Gen Wealth Financial Team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or call our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Securities offered through LPL Financial. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Independent Advisor Alliance. Independent Advisor Alliance and Gen Wealth Financial Advisors are separate entities from LPL Financial.